But we'll go over the basics. At any point, if you guys have any questions, just let me know, and I'll answer as many of those as possible. And at the end, if there's anything we didn't cover, just let me know, and I can answer those questions too. So the first thing we'll do is kind of go over the place and fill tab, and just kind of with rhinestones, a lot of things we get, the questions we get a lot of time is just like, how do we rhinestone like a font and stuff like that. So we'll go over a couple fonts and kind of let you know when to use the path, hatch, island. You're not going to really use the offset to fill any type of like shapes or fonts, so that's going to be a separate tool. But when to use the path, hatch, or island fill to help create these designs. So we'll upload it, or I'll type a couple fonts out. So we'll just write TRW a couple times. And we'll just grab a couple of these fonts. Here. And we'll make this all uppercase. Right. So here we just got a couple different style of fonts. One, and this is kind of going to go with all the fonts. What you're going to want to look for is what type of font it's set up as. So the one we have up top, the first TRW, that's a college block font. So it's very bulky. The corners on it are very sharp edge. They're very 90-degree turns compared to what we have here with our Cooper Black, where down here you'll see everything's nice and rounded. It doesn't really have those 90-degree angles or anything like that. So when you're looking or trying to convert these fonts into rhinestones, you always want to know what type of, what type of font we're going to use. So if it's going to be bulky like this one, we're going to use more of a hatch fill. And if we're going to have rounded edges, that's when we use an island fill. And that will go for most like shapes too. So if I'm trying to stone out an object and it has a lot of edges or curves to it, I might do an island fill, where if it's just, a square that I need to fill in or a blocky letter or shape, I can always use the hatch fill. So I'll show you the difference in the designs and when to use what fill. So our first one, I'll just make a couple copies of our college font. So up top here, you're going to see a couple different areas we need to fill out. So the top is pretty, easy. Do we want an inside or outside fill? So do we want the rhinestones inside of our area, or do we want them to the outside of our object? So if we're trying to create an inside fill to our design, we want to set that to inside. Our next step is we want to click this Add Stones button. So anytime we're working or want to add rhinestones, this Add Stones is what's going to allow, or what's going to place those stones for us. So if we didn't click this, essentially what we're adding is just like an outline, or it's not necessarily a contour because it's already a separate object, where a contour is kind of connected or a shared object. If I don't click Add Stones, so we'll go ahead and just show you real quick. Let's do outside. You'll see how it just creates this outside fill. So it's already an object by itself, but it's just, a vectorized object. So if we want a quick outline, that's a tool we can use to create that. However, when we want to add stones to that, we just need to make sure we're clicking Add Stones as well. Otherwise, it's just a vector outline, and it's not going to manually add the stones. So just because we're in the place and fill doesn't mean it's just going to add stones. We need to make sure we're clicking this button. So the next step is our islands. So right now I typed 1 in there, and the reason why is because when we go to the outside, you have to tell it the number of islands. Islands is rows of stones. So if I want 1 row of stones, I'm going to type 1 island. Now when we're filling an object, like if I want to fill the inside, or if I have a circle like this and I want to fill this entire object, I don't want to have to sit there and guess that it's going to take 4 rows of stones or 5 rows of stones to fill this circle. So instead, we're going to leave this at 0. So anytime we're doing an inside fill, as long as this is set to 0, we'll be good. So we had a question, the fill spacing mean. That's going to be next to, I'll go over that and I'll show you what the fill line will do. And most of the times with these fill line and contour, we're going to set it to auto, and that's going to pull from whatever stone size we have up here. So someone asked, was there ever be a reason not to have the add stones clicked? Yeah, the only reason you would do that is before we had like the live template editor, which now you can use the magic boundary to quickly add like a second color to the design. That's where we would add, this is where we wouldn't check the add stone. So if I wanted an outside or two-color design with my TRW right now, if I set this to 1 outside and I don't click add stones, then this is where it's gonna come in handy to not click add stones. This is kind of the only reason why you would or you wouldn't click this or have this checked, is just to, you know, add a quick outline to an object you already have most likely. Or if I wanted to, again, before we had the magic boundary tool, sometimes what we would do is to create like a 3-color look, I would do 2 different outlines, and then I would subtract this black through the green to give me a look like this. So now we have the magic boundary that can pretty much do that in one click. So essentially, you know, most likely now you'll always have this, you'll always want this add stones checked. But before we had the live template editor and stuff like that, that's why you pretty much have this section with the add stones checked or unchecked. So that's why it's kind of that option, just because before we didn't have all these extra features. All right, so we got that checked. We're going to go to 0. So now we have our fill line spacing, and again, most of this, it's going to be set to 0.14, which is great for your SS10 stones, but if you don't know what to check this at or set this to, just click auto and it will set from your stone size up here. To get to the live template editor, you're just going to click your Docker window right here, and it will drop down and say live template editor. All right. So the contour spacing, now this is something you might actually adjust as you're filling your objects. This is something that will probably go back and change sometimes. The next is the hatch angle. We're not going to really adjust this too much. And next, our last button is the corner detect. So anytime we have a shape like this TRW or this font where you have a lot of 90-degree angles, or any tight angles like this, it doesn't have to be 90 degree, we're going to want to hit this corner detect button. Now if we have a rounded design like this, where I don't really have too many corners, this check isn't necessary. So, and I'll show you the difference here. So let's grab our TRW. We're going to do it inside, add stones. We have it set to 0 because we don't know how many stones it's going to take to fill this, or how many rows or islands it's going to take to fill it. So we're going to leave it at 0. Our space is at 0.02. Our fill line is set to auto. Same with our contour. And we'll leave this corner detect off right now. So I'm going to do an island fill. So if you get an error like that, it simply means that the way we have this set up, and I'll click it again just so we can see the error. So it's saying object variable or with block variable not set. If you get an error like this, essentially what this means is it doesn't have enough room to place a stone or pass of stones through our design. And one of the reasons it's showing that is probably because of our contour spacing. So what our contour spacing does is, I'm going to move this to the outside real quick and set this to 1. So when I have this set to auto and I click Island Fill now, you'll see that it puts this right outside of our W or any of our text. Our rhinestones go just to the outside of that. That's what this contour spacing is doing. So it knows when this is set to auto, it knows the distance to go off our original design and place these stones so these stones don't overlap our vector part of our design. So what this auto is pretty much set at is about 0.08, 0.09. So if we get an error like we just did, and my font's pretty small too, so that's one thing that we need to consider too, is the bigger your design is, the easier it's going to be to fill it. When you have a smaller object, it's going to lose more detail in your design. So right now I'm only set to less than 5 inches wide. So if I were to just make this a little bit bigger, I won't get that same error. But we're going to keep it the same size just to see if we can fix it this way too. So we'll go back to our inside and 0 islands. And I'm going to set this to point, again, when it's set to auto, using our SS10 settings, it's going to be around 0.09 as our contour spacing. So just like if I type that number in, it'll probably give me the same error. So what we want to do instead, and it's going to give you this little fill, just go ahead and select it and delete it. So what I'm going to do instead is set this to about 0.04, just cut it in half a little bit more, and I'm going to click Island Fill. So same thing. So let's go a little bit smaller. So almost getting, so let's see if we leave it at 0. Okay. So at 0 we're able to do it, but it's essentially saying that it's not giving enough room to fill the rest of this. So it stops once it hits enough islands to make it feel like it can't go anymore, it's going to stop. So that's why it's set to 0. So with the next row of stones, we can probably manually fit a row inside here. But you can see in some areas, if it touches like this, if it tries to add stones and it will touch other ones, it's going to run into issues where it's not going to want to fill the rest of your design. So a quick fix on something like this, and you can also see too when I go back, is one thing that I want to show you too. Look at all my corners. You see how messy all my corners are? If I go back before I edit this and select the corner detect, Island Fill, not necessarily great results, but around my corners, you're going to see these edges are a lot nicer. So on this design, because it's so small, it's still having a little bit of trouble filling. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so it sets about 8 inches now. And we'll do the same setting. And actually we'll set this to auto. So when I set this to auto now, you can see it fills this a lot better. Now in some areas it's still going to run into some problems. So this is where we're going to adjust our contour spacing to hopefully get better results. So you can see right here down this middle row, I have these 2 rows kind of overlapping. My contour spacing brings in each side that 0.09, so it's not touching the outside of this row. But there's nothing wrong because right now I'm not going to have the vinyl in this design. So I can go right on the edge of it. So if I play around with my contour spacing, let's set this to 0.04, Island Fill. Look how nice this middle row looks now. So these are going to hang off the edge a little bit now, but that's okay because again, we're going to delete that black background out anyways. So now this looks a lot better, a little less editing. Now there's still some parts that we'll have to edit. And also when we use this corner detect, can everyone hear me okay? I got someone saying there's no sound. Everyone good? Okay. If you're having issues, well, you won't be able to hear this, but If there's stuff like that, you can log in and back out, and sometimes that'll fix the issue too. But okay, awesome. All right, so that's the kind of fill with an island fill. Now, with this type of font, I would have never actually started this or used an island fill to create this font because, again, it works pretty well, but there's going to be some areas we're definitely going to have to go back and edit. So around the kind of edges on the side here, our R has an overlapping row right here. So there's still a lot of areas. Yeah, this video will be, you'll be able to view it later as well. So usually takes, we're getting a little bit quicker with getting them up, but yeah, usually about 48 hours at the most, and they'll be good to watch. So with a design like this, I probably wouldn't use the island fill to actually fill this. I just want to kind of show you the difference and the corner detect and some of those features. But with a bulky font like this, the hatch fill is going to work probably a little bit better and a little bit quicker. So when I click the hatch fill, you'll see that it just goes straight across my design. So instead of kind of following your path, it's going to look at it and just go straight across and put as many stones in that area as it can. So we can still play around with the contour spacing to try to get better results. So if I set this to auto, hatch fill, some of these lines look a little bit cleaner and nicer. So sometimes the rows, if it can't fit or see another row up top, it might look a little bit weird. So you can see how this R up top has another row. These are all quick fixes though. So all I have to do to kind of fix that would just be taking this row and just making a quick copy and moving it up. And same with all my W's here. I would just copy these ones up, move them up one row, and then we're set. And same with our bottom here. And I could take one off just to make it look a little bit better too. So just like that, I pretty much have my design ready to go. So I could remove that background, clear my paths, and now I have my nice font created. Make sure everything's cleared. There we go. So to copy, someone asked, how do I copy so fast? That you can do a quick copy and paste with your mouse. So if you left click and hold, and while you're left clicking and holding, you're going to do a right click and release. And now wherever I drop this, it will make a copy. So again, that's going to be a left click, and I'm holding down this left click the whole time. While I'm holding down the left side, I'm going to right click and release. So I'm still the whole time holding the left, and now you'll see I have a little, underneath my pointer, there's like a little plus sign, and that will make a copy. And same with the stones. You can individually grab just one stone or row and make a copy that way too. So it's just a left click and hold, and then a right click and release, and then when I let go of the left side, it will drop that wherever I have it. So now we have our second TRW font. So on this one we have a lot more curved edges. It's not, we don't have the sharp angles that we have here. So if I use this font here and I do the same thing, I want to use the hatch fill, you're going to see how many problems you have around the curved edges. So the hatch fill is great for, more like rectangle shapes or font setups like that where it's more blockier. So like an impact font works pretty well with the hatch fill too. Now that some of the letters will have some kind of curves with I think like the R's and stuff are a little bit more rounded. So you might have to manually edit some of those. But you can look now on this font that we just stoned out, around the edges, the hatch fill just doesn't do the best job sometimes. So down here, we kind of have this just left off. It isn't able to follow this path up here too. Around the R, it doesn't look too bad on this one. You can see the bottoms are all a little bit messed up. Again, here, we kind of have this extra bottom piece. Doesn't necessarily look bad when we take our background away, but it doesn't hold the same shape that our actual font does. So up here you can see it looks a lot blockier than the font actually is. So those are going to be kind of the results we'll get with a hatch fill on an object that's a little bit curvier. So this is actually the type of font or style that would work better with an island fill. So if I did the same settings, island fill, clear my paths, you can see how it's able to follow these edges a lot better. Now we'll still have to go back and edit some of this, but the edges and the general shape of our text, you can see a lot clearer when we use the island fill. And I'll pull this up so we can kind of compare them side by side. So you can see it doesn't necessarily look bad over here, but when we show it next to what it's actually supposed to look like, you can see we want to use more of the island fill settings for something like this. So any questions so far on the island or hatch fill? All right, so yeah, we had a couple of questions on the path fill too. Now the path fill is simply going to just do the outside of your design. So the edges here, on this one I did have it checked. So someone asked if I had the corner detect angle, do you have to keep it checked? On this one I had it checked. I don't necessarily have to on this one though, because of the edges aren't very sharp like that. But it won't necessarily hurt it either if you do forget to leave it checked. On this one, it actually, yeah, it doesn't look like it's too much of a difference. Gotcha. Yeah, so we have some other questions coming in too. So is there a way to tell or measure the gap between stones? So that's going to be your space right here. So if you want them a little bit closer or further away, you can adjust your spacing. Now, stuff like here where I might manually go back and add a row of stones through my design here, this is where we'll use, gotcha. Yeah, so this is where we're going to use our respace stones to make the spacing equal. So this button right here is our respace button. So in a design like this, you can see I actually have a couple stones overlapping here. So what I would do is select this stone here, just go hold shift and select each stone in that path. So I have 6 stones selected, and I'm going to hit respace. Okay, so there's actually a 7th stone back behind it that I didn't select, so that's why I didn't respace it. But this one here, you can see the space, these ones are pretty much touching. This one has a pretty good spacing. This one has even more spacing, and this one has about the same on the edges. So all I would have to do to fix this is just select each stone by holding shift, respace, and now all those share the same distance between each stone. Yeah, you could. Someone asked if you could merge overlap when you had something like this. You could, but since I did the respacing already, I just know that I didn't select that one, so I can just delete it. What's cool too about the respacing tool is I can select, I don't have to go through and add a stone all the way up my whole row up the R. All I have to do is select these stones in the path, so I selected these 4 here. Hit my respace, you'll see the spacing of each one increase, but then I can come back and hit add 1 stone, and now it's added that stone for me. So instead of me going through, now if I had 2, you can see how they're all touching and overlapping. We don't want that. So we're going to go down 1, we have nice spacing between each one, so we're good. So then I just move on to the next row, same thing, probably hit the up once, and then I have good spacing. Same thing here. Up arrow, and then it's spaced. So I don't have to manually go through and add these stones first. You can add stones by you can't just select a group. Like if I wanted to add stones in this line here, I can't just select these stones and hit the up arrow. You have to create a path first. So that's going to hit that respacing tool, and then I can manually take or add stones to that path. So are you, yeah, I mean, not all of them are going to be like perfect spacing where, you know, each one is the same distance between each one, especially when it's on like a t-shirt, because even a design like we just created here, when you put this like on a t-shirt, it might look a little bit more like these are all spaced out or not, you know, it doesn't look as good. But what I like to do to make sure my design is going to look good and my spacing looks nice is go to my mockups, highlight my design, and just click this Simulate Stones button. And you can even put it on like a black background. This gives you a better idea of how it's going to look actually as with the stones and stuff too, rather than just those blank dots. So if it looks good kind of set up in this area, most likely your design is going to look good, you know, when it's on your shirt too. And then to go back, all you do is highlight, hold shift, and click that button again, and it'll revert back to just normal circles. Now what you don't want to do, and I just did that, so let me go back and show you so you guys don't all do this. So when I simulated the stones to add, you know, make them look real, all this is doing is adding a second layer onto your existing circle. So if you do that and you start moving these around, just know that it's not, you know, it's not going to hold that just like you rearranged it now, because these are just going to disappear. So if you're moving the ones that are actually just like the top, or if I add a stone here, when I click this Simulate Stones button again, if it's just that top, it's going to disappear from your design. So if you want to edit something, go back to where it was just regular, just like this, readjust your stones, move them however you want, and then go back to the Simulate Stones. Otherwise, if you're just moving these top parts and you go back to your regular stones, all those will just disappear. So you do have to highlight your design, hold shift, and then click this again, a left click, and that will get rid of it. If you click this twice, it'll just add probably 2 stone, or it's still just adding the 1. But you have to make sure you're holding shift and then left click. Awesome, awesome. All right. All right, so now we'll kind of go over a little bit more of some of our rhinestone fonts and why fonts are a little bit, in the long run, it's going to be a lot easier just to use, you know, purchase probably a couple fonts that you'll use a lot, and time saving wise, it's going to be very, very helpful, which, you know, time save equals more money. So I'll kind of build a design like we might just, like if we didn't have fonts, and then we'll do the same design using our fonts, and we'll show you kind of the difference in how quick it can be just by using our fonts instead of trying to, you know, stone out everything. Now if it's quick and just, you know, maybe a one-off, we can get away with it. But if we're doing like, let's say we're doing like a whole sports team, and they come to you and they want, you know, a college font on the back, it's for all the moms, they want a college font on the back of the last name with their son's number. So that shouldn't be, you know, too hard of a problem, especially because we know now with our college fonts that essentially I can use the hatch fill and those work pretty good and fill pretty nicely where I don't have to do too much work. So we'll do, let's do this college inside. So I have my name set up. Let's go, let's say it's for the back of a t-shirt, so we want 10 inches. We're going to go to our text spacing tool and just bring that in just a little bit. So now we'll go to our place and fill, and we'll try a hatch fill first. So that looks pretty good. I'll definitely have to kind of go in and probably just, so first things first, let's go ahead and highlight our design, clear our paths. So now I can manually go in and edit our stones. So what I would probably do on a design like this is I'm going to select one stone, make a copy, and bring it all the way down here. Select those two stones, and then on our edit tab we have a fill between two. So I just left click and it will fill between those two stones all the rest of the rhinestones. So I can do the same on this side. Just bring this straight down. Select my two stones, fill between two. And let's go ahead and bring this one over just a tad. We can see that is crooked a little bit. So now we have to figure out if with this one, instead of trying to fit a row in here, what I would probably do is just move my stones up. So I would just delete those ones out. Maybe move this guy up a bit here, and then again fill between two. Now if I have this M and I already have my left side set up perfectly, we're going to make this really easy on ourselves, and we're just going to delete our right side, go ahead and select our left, make a copy, come up here and mirror. So we won't be able to take advantage of this with every letter, but if we can, we definitely want to do that to make setting this up a little bit easier. So now my overlapping stones, I'll just come in here and delete those. And just edit that a bit so it looks a lot cleaner. So now we have our first letter set up. So we're already a few minutes in. Now, again, I'm walking you through it, so it's probably not going to take as long, but starting out, it's definitely going to add a little bit of time if we're not familiar with how to rhinestone stuff out and everything like that. So we're already at a couple minutes now, and now I'm just starting the O. So probably same thing here. This one's not going to take too much. We're just going to select both of those, go to our edit, and fill between two. And I can honestly just select those, make a copy, bring those right over. So our R, not going to be too much work, but just kind of fill in this line in here, bring this down, fill between two. And this area up top, I'm just going to manually place those. So I'm going to drop one in the middle here, and then drop one in the middle there. So same thing here. We're just going to manually drop these two. All right, so not too much work. And now we're on the E. This will be posted on YouTube once it's been edited. So again, just fill between two. So not too much, nothing crazy right now. With these hatch fills, it should be less editing than most of the island fills if you're picking like a font like this. So again, I'm just going to bring this down, fill between two, make a copy, and then just bring that right over. Yeah, so essentially someone asked, would this be the same for clip art? Yeah, depending on what type of clip art you have or trying to recreate, like let's say, I'll pull something up real quick. see. Here we go. Let's see. What do we want to fill? Let's say we had maybe a person, you know, like, so any object like this too. Now again, this is a good question. So on a design like this, even if you have like a basic, you know, clip art image like here, I wouldn't try most of the designs like any clip art like this, unless it's probably just, you know, a big letter like maybe for like a college or something like that, where you might have a couple like letters intersecting or something like that. Most of the time you're filling like a clip art like this, you'll probably use an island fill. And that would be the same setup, add stones, 0 islands because we don't know how many stones we're going to, or how many rows we're going to have. Auto, auto, and then I would click island fill. And that would be kind of the start of my design. Okay, so I didn't hit the corner detect. So you'll see the corner areas of my design get really kind of bunched up and don't look too good. So now just by simply hitting corner detect, island fill, now you'll see in these areas they look a lot cleaner, not as much jumbled up in the corners. So then we would just clear a path, and then I'd have to go in and use some of our editing tools to kind of clean this up. But again, this would be definitely more of like an island fill type of setup. Now, one thing is with anytime we're using stones, we always want to remember that the bigger the design is, the more detail we'll be able to get throughout our design. So if I do the same settings and I make this guy 3 inches tall and do an island fill, you can see the detail in my design compared to something like this. I have a lot more detail in my design here. So that's going to be with, you know, whether it's a font or just an image like our clip art image like we have here. Any of those clip arts, and that's kind of what we did with some of those rhinestone ones. You know, we just rhinestoned over those. But yeah, any players like, you know, if you're just trying to add maybe a batter or something like that, most of these will always be a quick island fill. Again, we'll go through and kind of, we'll have to edit stuff like that. But if I do the same design, make it 3 inches tall, you'll see that it doesn't even have like enough room to place stones on the back. So if you're getting stuff like this where it's just not filling that well, just make sure your design's set to like a normal size, and then it should fill a little bit easier. Now, that doesn't mean I can't take a design and manually add stones to it. So if I drop a stone and I come through and I want to manually add stones to this design, I can totally do that, and I'll probably get, you know, a decent result. But the wizard won't be able to fill it like we want to manually if it's like a small design like this. And you can see, I mean, if I take this away, we have no idea that that's like the beginning of a foot. So when the design's behind it, it typically looks a little bit better because you know the object. So always kind of bring that away and just so you can see it without that background, and you'll really see what your design, you know, is looking like. All right. So we got our last name set up, and now I can add my numbers. So just do a 10. Now again, we want to stick with something easy. So if you don't have a college font, I would definitely recommend that if you're doing like rhinestone numbers and stuff like that. Because again, these college ones, to click the hatch fill and for it to pretty much be done is a huge time saver. So on this one, I'm not even going to really edit any part of my design. So that one's pretty easy. Our last name is really going to be a little more work. You can still see the E here. Doesn't look the best, so we'll kind of edit that ourselves. And that's what I was kind of talking about. Once you move these backgrounds, you'll start to see some areas that might need to be touched up or bigger gaps in our design. So like here, I can always come back and manually set these up. So I have 4 rows like my other R over here. So we can always arrange these as we needed. Can you stone out the new Flutter script font? You should be able to, or at least go around it. I actually haven't installed that one yet, so I don't have it on my computer. But any font, you'll be able to add stones or accent them. And that's what we see a lot anytime, like now too, is, with these fonts, rather than fill them or waste time filling them, we'll just do an outline to it. So if I just had the Moreau, and this one's not the best just because the lines are a little bit thinner, but we could always do an outside one island fill, and just like that, we have a pretty nice design set up. We'll go through and edit, the E and some of the A, but again, there's not too much. So you should be either able to fill it or, do a quick outline just to accent it with rhinestones too. So we created this design here. This would be pretty much set up for the back of a t-shirt. So I could make this maybe all red. And it crashed. Just give me 1 second. As you see, so we just had a question about computers lagging with stones, and you'll see that sometimes too, and sometimes with the stones too, it seems to, I probably didn't clear a path right there, so as I tried to tell it a command, it crashed my computer. So that's one thing with rhinestones we want to make sure we're setting up nicely too, is that we're making sure we clear a pass on everything. Now one reason, so that's a good question though. So with the rhinestones, let's say you purchased a design or you created design, and it's a pretty big design, it's a full design. So I'm going to create a circle that's, let's just say 8 inches, and I'm going to do an island inside, 0, auto, island fill. So with just this circle alone, I have over, you can see down here, 2,631 objects selected, or selected. So if you tell Corel a command when you have 200 or over 2,000 stones selected or 200 objects selected, and it can't do it to one of those objects or all of them, it pretty much just bogs down Corel and closes it. So same thing, if I have a couple designs or I'm working on this and my computer is a little bit laggy, you can even see when I'm moving this, it takes a second to actually catch up. It's because it's recognizing this as 2,600 objects. If you group it together, it should be a little bit nicer where it's a group of 26, where now it's just reading it as one group and not all those objects. That seems to help sometimes with the, lagginess too. So if possible, I would try to group, if you're doing stuff like that, try to group as many colors or the whole design together, and that should help with that too. So delete that out. All right, so we just saw the design I created. So what I'm going to show you now is with our fonts, how quickly we can pretty much create the same design. So we have our TRW College 2-inch. So I just type in lowercase, hit resize, hit yes. So now that's all perfectly set up. I don't have to edit one thing. And then I can just type out the number 10. We have our athletic 2 color or our mega. So our mega one's pretty nice with the fonts, or with the bigger letters. So I'll go ahead and size that. Yes. And now I have my 10 set up. So within 30 seconds or so, I have my entire design set up. I can group this. I can set this to white, group those together. Make sure that's all centered. And then when I'm ready, I can go ahead and throw it on a t-shirt. So what's nice about these fonts is every letter is going to look exactly the same. I'm just typing it out, resizing to the stone size I want to use, and I'm done. So instead of me having to type Moreau, edit all the letters in Moreau, and that's going to take me about 5 minutes. Now the next thing, when we have Vassallo, that word's going to be, that name's longer, so it's going to be a little bit sized differently. So none of my letters from Moreau are going to work with Vassallo. So I'm going to have to spend time on that. That's a longer word too, so that's going to be more time to edit. The numbers weren't too bad, but every time, if you could imagine having, a team of 20 kids and you're stoning out 20 different names, they're all going to look different sizes and be off a little bit because of the length of the name, where now I can just write that out. I just purchase one font and then I'm done. Everything's going to look exactly the same. The one thing I might have to change is the stone size, just so I know it fits correctly, and I'll go over that in a second. So let's just put this on a women's t-shirt. Let's say Burnout, save our product, save our design, simulate stones, create the mock-up. Oh, I put it on the front of the shirt. I'll go back and go to our product. Make sure that's the back. Save our product. Highlight, save our design, create mockup. So just like that, I'm done. If I want to show my customer a little bit of how it blings too, I can throw some bling on there too. So in the same time it pretty much took me to type this out, set it up, create a mock-up, is the same time or quicker that it took me to set everything up and do it manually. So these are where the fonts are really going to save you a lot of time. Yeah. So the rules for, that's a good one. So the rules for the stones, like Jerry just asked, like the hatch fill for square fonts, anything like bulky or square, whether it be some type of object too, if you're like doing a clip art and it's more bulky and square, that would be a hatch fill. If we're doing something with like curved edges, or like the baseball player, that band player that we were doing, those are going to be more of the island fills. And the path will do either one. It doesn't matter the object. The path is just going to go around the outside. So typically it doesn't matter what type of, whatever it starts as, it's just going around that outside line. So it doesn't matter if it's a bulky or a rounded object. So as everyone, I know some people are new to the rhinestone, so is there any questions on how our rhinestone fonts work? Does everyone know what to look for when you're purchasing fonts or searching our site for fonts? So someone asked about cutting that bottom of the E and A. No, it does look like the E might be up a little bit, but I can manually knock those down. So that won't be a problem. And then someone asked about the bling that we added to the t-shirt. So on your mock-up tab, above the simulate stones, you'll have this little add bling button. So it's it looks like it's grayed out, but you can actually click on that whenever you want. So you just click on it, click on the area you want to add the bling, and then it'll add it, and then you'll have to come back and recheck that add bling button. And you can go back in here and select those, move them around, make them really big, make them small, however you want to set this up. Now this is just as a demonstration or a way to show your customer like what that looks like. It's not, if I send this to a customer, let them know that's just a bling. It's an effect. We've had people ask how to cut that out and stuff like that too. So it's not actually meant to be, on your shirt. It's just the effect of the stone kind of blinging. All right, so we had a couple people ask to go over kind of the fonts and everything like that. So first of all, with the font we use right here, this is our part of this. The first one was our TRW 200. It was our college-based font. So it comes in a 2-inch. So the first thing with our rhinestone fonts, the majority of them, unless it's like a script font, is going to have an RF and an SF version. So you can see when I have all these fonts right here, you'll see each one 1.25 RF, 1.25 SF. The RF is what we use right here to spell out the name. If I use the SF, it's going to look the exact same. The only difference is it's going to put the cut boxes around each letter. So the SF version is more meant for me to, and it would work with what we kind of just did here. Like if I set this up and cut out this design, I can only use the Moreau for Moreau now. So if I cut a template that just reads out Moreau, it's either a one and done template, or I hope that, the whole Moreau family is coming to me so I can use this template more than once. So what we'd actually want to do for this, design like this, if I had to cut out a bunch of, kids' last names, I would use the SF version. I would write out the entire alphabet. And then I'd probably add a couple extra letters, like an extra A, an extra N, S, maybe R, T, some of those letters that might be used a couple times. And I would just set this up, maybe break these down, just like that. Hit my resize button. Hit yes. It's going to resize all these. If it changes the color like that, that's okay. I can actually go in here, select all the same, make that like a yellow background. So I can always change that. What this is doing is it's cutting out individual letters. So instead of cutting out just one word Moreau, I'm cutting out each letter in the alphabet. So then once these are individually cut out, I just take my M, just select my O, and then the R, and then so on. So once I have these all cut out, they're all going to line up on the bottom. So I just line up those bottoms, line up the boxes, and then I'm able to spell out any name I want. So on something like this, I would want to cut out the entire alphabet, and then I can do Moreau, I could do Basallo, I could do Hernandez. So all those names, I can just cut these out once and rearrange them however I want. Now that's why I said, though, think of like Basallo, you're going to have 2 S's, 2 L's, 2 A's. So on a lot of these letters, you'll want to cut out, you could cut out 2 total alphabets and probably be good. Or you can just, cut out, 2 S's, 2 L's, 2 E's, 2 R's, find out the letters that you see repeat a lot, and then just cut out a couple extra of those. So does that make sense with the when to use kind of the RF and when to use the SF? Okay. So like let's say on this design up top here, instead of my last name, we wanted like our team name. So if let's say the Spartans. If I'm doing a team name and each one of the jerseys is going to have that same team name on it, that's when I can use the RF version, resize my design. That's set up now. And then I would go to my templates tab Depending on my cutter, I could either do a Stone 2 Plus cut. So if I had like a Silhouette, maybe a GCC, I'd use this, or even a Roland, I could use the Stone 2 Plus. If I'm using the Graphtec, I'm going to just use the vinyl overcut. So I'm just going to left click, and it's going to create one template for me instead, so I don't have to go ahead and rearrange those. Because if I'm going to use this Spartans design for, if I'm going to use this Spartans designs on 10 or more shirts, then I don't want to have to rearrange the letters each time or anything like that. It will get, it'll be worth the money just to create one of those templates. The Stone 2 Plus cut usually just works a little bit better. Now, if you're already using the Stone overcut and your features are dialed in, continue what you're doing. But, if you haven't used the rhinestones yet, I'd probably recommend the Stone 2 Plus cut. And if you're using a Graphtec, the vinyl overcut. So someone asked, is 2 inches pretty standard for a rhinestone name on a shirt? I would say it's, a decent size. The one things with like t-shirts is everything can be a little bit different depending on the brand, and if you're dealing with more adults or kids. So the 2 inches, it's really going to depend on your t-shirt that you're using and kind of the word you're using. So if I had the Spartans right now, it's the word Spartans in SS10s is over 11 inches wide. So on most t-shirts, that might be a little bit big. If it's going on the back, it's probably fine. But like on a chest, that might, especially on like an adult small, that might be pushing the boundaries a little bit. So that's where that's kind of going to like our next step with purchasing or looking for fonts that will work correctly. So on a design like this, a quick fix would just be going to my 6s, hitting the resize, and now my design is 8 inches, which will fit pretty well on most adult size t-shirts. If you get into the XLs, we can just go right back into the 10s, and then I have the same design created for larger and smaller t-shirts. Now, we don't probably want to get in the habit of using 6s as little as, or we want to use 6s as little as possible. They're not, compared to 10s, they're not fun to work with. So if possible, we want to leave it in 10s. If not, we can always resize our font by just switching this to the 6 and hitting resize. Now, when we're looking for a font that we want to use on a t-shirt on our site, let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. So on our site, if we go to fonts, you'll see all these different fonts that we have set up here. So like this new one right here, or let's do our Halloween theme one. Actually, that one. Okay. So most of the fonts, we'll have to look at these ones. So yeah, the 6s are smaller than the 10s. So you don't need, you don't want to just necessarily go out and just purchase a bunch of fonts, because it's just, yeah. So a lot of people are agreeing that the 6s are a lot harder or a bigger pain to work with. So just, take that as into consideration just when you're using them. It's a little bit harder to cut the template and brush them in, so it's just more, more time consuming. So most of the fonts will have this like a word underneath it. So this one says October, this one Atlanta, Cleveland. When we're looking at a font that we want to purchase, first of all, you can send your customer to this site and tell them, find a font you want, or you can, show them at the store. You can go on here and show them the different fonts and everything too. But once they choose kind of a style that they want, and we can narrow this down a little bit too, depending on like what what type of font or what type of word we're going to use. Like if I know I'm going to have to write out the word basketball, that's a pretty long text compared to, just soccer or something like that. So if I have the word basketball, I know I'm going to have to choose a smaller font to start out with so I can fit more letters across from it. So right away, you'll see this rhinestone font height. That's one of the kind of breakdowns. So typically, another good rule with stones is the taller the font, the wider the word's going to be. So if I know I'm going to have to use the word basketball or some last names and they're 10 plus characters long, I'm probably going to start around the 1.5 inches. Now, if I'm using this for a school and they just want the 4 letters, like for Southeast High School, they just want SEHS, or Brain River, they want BRHS. Then I can go to a font that's, either 2.1 to 3 or even more than 3 inches because I know I'm only using 4 letters across the chest and I want that bigger so it takes up more room. So this is going to help, narrow your search down. And then the next thing we want to look for is we're going to select the, let's say we like this TRW 5500. So right away it's going to tell you in the name how tall it is. So this 1.4 inches. And then next, you'll have the word Cleveland. And underneath it, you'll see that it's 6.7 inches wide. So the word Cleveland in this font in SS10s is 6.7 inches wide. So we have, 9 characters in this text. So the word Cleveland has 9 letters in it. I hope I'm counting that right. So if I'm using the word basketball, which is a little bit longer, I know this is going to fit okay on a t-shirt going across. Now, let's go back to a different font that's a little bit bigger. So let's go to this one here, our TRW 5206. You'll see that this is, each one of these letters is 5.7 inches tall. Sorry, we'll have to edit this because it looks like it's only supposed to be 2.6. So we'll edit this one. I think it looks like someone may have just copied over it. But underneath it, you'll see that it's 11 inches wide. So the word Orleans, oh, I got you. So they put New Orleans. So that's why this whole design is 5.7 inches tall. And then the bottom is 11. So the Orleans is 11 inches wide. So that's 7 characters, and it's already at 11 inches wide. So if I know I have basketball, if I have to write out the word basketball, it's probably going to be 13, 14 inches wide. So we're probably not going to use this design for something that I know I have a lot of characters in. So that will help narrow down what fonts to choose and everything like that. We have artwork packs that just give you a collection of rhinestone fonts to get started. So you can always purchase something like that. But honestly, I would look for, maybe some college theme fonts, maybe a couple script, and that will get you enough to get started with. And then if your customer brings you a design and it's in an impact font, or if it's in like kind of a college font like this, and they say, hey, I want this. OTF is just it's a font type, so it's an open true type font. I believe that's something like that. So if you see OTF or TTF, that's just a font. That just means it will install as a font. All right. Sorry, what was I just... Forgot mid-sentence what I was just saying. So with the heights of the fonts, just make sure, something like this, Orleans, this would be something we want for a smaller font. But, I would get started with probably just a couple college fonts, script, and then if your customer comes at you with, impact or college font that's already, typed out in just a regular vectorized font, and says, I want this stoned out, you can just send us the image and say, hey, do you have a font that is close to this, what this customer is looking for? And we'll send you to the closest font that we have to it. So we've already tried to taken like a lot of these common fonts that people use designing wise. So like Impact, College, you can see all these. We have a lot of different script fonts, smaller fonts, all different size fonts, so Western. So you can see we have a lot of different style throughout our catalog. So depending on what your customer is looking for, we probably have something that's, resembles it. Now, if it's just a one-time design and you don't want to invest in a font, like we showed you earlier, you can still use our software and stone out any of these fonts. It's just these, this type of stuff is going to make it a lot quicker. The font for Impact, let's see if it's 6. Yeah, so TRW 6 will be pretty close to our the Impact font. All right, so now what we'll do is kind of show you a way. Script fonts, there's a couple good ones. The TRW, and let me show you this real quick too. The TRW 03 and 04 scripts are really nice. Now some of our rhinestone design, our fonts will actually come in a 2-color or 2-size font. So with this one, I'll write out Merry Christmas. And I'll use our TRW 04 font. So this is already stoned out for us. If I zoom in, you can see that we have a smaller and a large stone size. So normally what we would do is I would select SS10. Once I type this out, I click resize. And it asks me not all stones are 0.135, would you like to replace? And 99% of the time, we'll just hit yes. So if I hit yes, now look at my font. So where all those small stones were, they all went to the same size SS10, so now they don't fit in my design. So with this type of font, any 2-size font, we only have a few, like a handful of them. And this, you can see in the name, multi-stone. So that's 2 different stone sizes. So what we're going to do now instead is we have 2 different sizes. We have our large and our small. So what our software will know to do is if I set this to 10s, it's going to make my larger stones 10s. And the next size down will be 6s, so it's going to make all these the smaller circles or stones 6s. In order to do that, we need to hit the resize. And again, once we get to this point, instead of hitting yes, we're just going to click no. So now when I come back here, all these remain perfect SS6 circles, and my bigger ones are all SS10 now. So now, look how nice this font looks. It's already done for me. I can just move this up a little bit here. Group that, make it green. Highlight my section here, make it red. Go to my mockups. Let's do a quick product. Design, product, women, burnout. Let's say long sleeve on this one. Save. Design, save, create mockup, and just like that, I have a Christmas t-shirt. And I can add something in here, maybe like a star or a tree, or I could rearrange this font so I don't have as much of a space in there now. No, so these aren't 10s now. This font is a combination of 2 different size stones. So the larger stones will be 10s, the smallers will be 6s. So the only time when someone asks how will we know to click yes or no, so the only time we're clicking no is if it's if the font is a multi stone font, so or has 2 different size stones in it. So if I have the same font and I use this Tier W rounded, all these stones in this design are the same size. So if I wanted to resize this, I just click resize, hit yes, and I'm done. With this one, because it has multiple size stones in it, we have our smaller and larger stones. This one, I just simply hit resize and hit no. And that way it will keep the smaller stones small and the larger stones large. So that's the only time you're really hitting no, is just if it has a combination of stone sizes. But then I can just, quickly make my t-shirt, put on a black background, and then make those look real, and then add a little bling to it. So again, I can come back and resize all these. I can move them around however I want, whatever placement I think looks the best. Yeah, so the wizard's going to pick, so with any with any combination fonts that has more than one size stone in it, it will know how to resize it. So on this design here, we have SS10 selected in my drop down. So the larger stones will be 10s and the smallers will be 6s, because the 6s are the next size down. If I switch this to 16s, now the large size stone is going to be 16s and my smaller ones are going to be 10. So it's going to know just to pick the next size down. All right, so one little thing we can also do with our rhinestone fonts is apply, we can't change too much of the shaping of it, but we can add a little bit of an envelope feature to give it a, different look. So with this one, let's do, we'll do pirates. Let's do Seminoles. And something like this impact kind of font. So I have my text Seminoles. I'm going to go ahead and resize this to 10s. I'm going to hit yes because it's just all one size. And if I quickly, right now it's just a one color font. So someone asked, do you brush in a large stone first on a two-size design? Once you get to the pre-cut side of it, yeah, you'd probably actually want to you'd probably brush in the 6s first. That way you don't have any trouble picking. If you do the 10s first, it might make it harder to pick up the 6s. So I'd probably do the 6s first. If you're doing, let's say, like a design that's all one size but different colors, it doesn't matter which one you do first. It doesn't matter when you choose the size. The only time that it matters when you choose the size up here is before you click the resize button. So when you're setting this up or typing it originally, it doesn't matter. It just matters what you select here before you hit resize. But once it's already resized, I can quickly switch it. If I want to go to 6s, I can just select a different size font and hit resize. So it doesn't necessarily matter too much. It's just you want to, select it and then hit resize. But if it's too big or anything like that, you can always go back and change the size. So with our Seminole text here, if I wanted this a 2-color font real quick, I could just select half of it and just change it to a different color. So right away I have a 2-color rhinestone design now. We're going to go a step further and we're going to group this all together. and now we're going to add a little bit of an envelope feature to it. So this is going to be set up for a swimming design. So what I want to do is kind of add like a wave effect. So I'm going to go to my add preset. I'm going to select their ribbon, and you'll see how it adds this effect to my design. So I'm going to hit apply, and just like that, it's going to shape my design kind of like a wave. It also kind of scrunches my text a little bit, so if you look at all these circles now, these aren't perfect circles by any means. So what I want to do is, because they're a little bit scrunched vertically, I'm just going to pull down my design just a little bit. Yep, so someone asked about the 2-color. All I did for that is just highlight the top half of this design and just switch the color stone. And then we went ahead and grouped it. So it has to be a grouped object to be able to add an envelope. So we're going to go to add preset. We're going to select our little ribbon kind of one here. You'll see the shape that it wants to add it to, and then we're going to hit apply. So again, when it does that, you can kind of see it scrunches the height. So once it completes the pattern or shape, I'm just going to pull this down just a little bit, and you can see how those circles are a little bit more circles than like scrunched ovals. So I could go down a little bit more if I wanted to, but they look pretty good like they are set up now. So now all I have to do is go back to my software, and instead of hitting the resize, next to it we have a replace all. So the replace all takes every one of these circles. So I'm going to select one. So when I hit this replace, it turns it into a perfect SS10 circle. So essentially we're just going to highlight the entire design, click replace all, and now all these are back to perfect circles. So you can see they're a little bit close on the spacing. So to fix that real quickly, I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. Hit my respace, and now all those are nicely spaced apart from each other. So now we've added this nice wave effect, and then I can come back in here. We'll type in Seminole Swimming. Again, we're going to make it easy. Use one of our small fonts. That's our TRW 130. We'll go lowercase. And I'm actually going to use my text spacing. Going to space this out just a bit. And we'll do swimming, not swimmings. Hit my resize. It's a little bit, I want it to go a little bit more across, so I'm going to go back to my text spacing, pull this across, respace. Looks a little bit better. So I'll just select that. Center both of these so it looks nice. Yeah, once you hit the respace or replace, you can go ahead and send that. These are all SS10s now, so I can send it over my cutter. So we'll make these crystal. Let's go ahead and make this crystal 2. So now I have my design created. Let's make these maybe a softer blue so it stands out a little bit more. So we have our Seminole Swimming design. And of course I can always come back and first let's make these all real stones. And then we'll add our bling effects. So we had a couple questions that come in. To split the color, could you have used a split feature in the wizard? No, that's going to be set up for more like vinyl or vectored fonts. So what someone was asking is, we have a feature in the software where if I have a text that's set up like this, impact, and I want to split this in half like I have here, on our edit tab, I can left or do a right click and it'll split it horizontally. So now that creates a 2-color effect just like that. We don't want to do that for rhinestone designs because once Once you do that, it won't read this as a font anymore, so I couldn't switch this to the TRW 130. Fine. How would you do an ombre instead of a split? The ombre would be a little bit different. So with like an ombre, let's say we had our design like this. Let's go back to our 6s. So with something like that kind of effect, what I'd probably do is first hit resize so we have it set up. And then depending on my colors, I'd probably just highlight like a certain line going across, like a little gap like that, just going across. And, something like that. And then it would be a manual effect of me. I'm going to hold shift and just randomly select a bunch of these stones in here. And I go a little bit heavier. And let's just do one letter so we can kind of see it a little bit more. I go a little bit heavier to start out with, and then as I got further from that middle line, I'd probably go less and less stones. I'm not sure how great it's going to look on like a smaller design like this, but we'll give it kind of a test to see. Yeah, so it's going to be a little bit hard to see on a design like this. But the ombre would be more of like a center focal line and then slowly selecting less and less stones, kind of going like away from it. Yeah, something like that where it slowly fades into a center line. Do you resize before or after the envelope? You're going to resize before you add the envelope. So what you want to do is you're going to, let's say we have our design like this. Let's say it's really small. So I'm going to hit the resize, hit yes, and then I'm going to select my design. If I want it like a two-color look, this is where I can add my second color. And then I'm going to group everything together, and now I can add my envelope. Yeah, so someone asked with the Seminoles text up here, the software will automatically separate by color. So when you have a design like that, and it's going to read those dots. So I'm going to pull those out real quick. Let's go ahead and bring this to a new page. Try to bring it to a new page. There we go. Go to my templates. I could do a 2+ cut, vinyl overcut, whatever feature I want to use, and it will separate by color for me. So in this instance, it wouldn't matter if I did the white or the crystal or the blue stones first, because they're gonna brush in both the same way, whatever color I do first or second. But if I had 6s and 10s, I'd want to do the 6s template first. All right. Any other questions on anything we've covered so far? Alrighty. Well, that pretty much wraps up tonight's webinar. Can you place this group of stones on a path? Yeah. So same way we create that envelope, someone asked if we could add stones to a path. So if I had a design like this, let's get over. And the thing with this one is if we had, like let's say I had a little circle here, It gets a little tricky because you'll need to keep it as a font first, where I'm not resizing it, but I could put this Seminoles text around a circle object like that. And then what you'll need to do next is you can go to your live template editor, hit break apart effects, and then once you have that broken apart, now you can hit the resize and hit yes, and now that's shaped like a normal, like around the text path like that. TRW6 is not bigger than the Mega Bling. And the Mega Bling one is like a pack, so I think you get like 4 or 5 fonts. Yeah, so you can do it with these, with the stones. There's kind of some, depending on your design and how you set it up, if someone tried to arc a font like we have here with the Seminoles text with an envelope like I just did, it wouldn't work that well. And that's one thing with the envelopes too, is just because we use the envelope feature doesn't mean every time we use an envelope it's going to come out perfectly. So our Seminoles text like here, if I try to add an arc like this to my Seminoles text, you can see now how skewed some of these circles are. So if I try to add more height to it, it's going to raise my arc, but it doesn't necessarily help my circles. So if I come back now and I hit my replace all with 10s, you can see how sometimes, depending on your font and how much you arc it, there might be some areas that don't look as clean. Now, as you get to the middle, it still looks pretty good, but those outside letters usually are the ones that are affected the most. Anything in the meantime, always give us a call at 941-755-1696, and you know to ask for Gabe, or you can shoot us an email at info@therhinestoneworld.com. Thank you guys. Have a great day.